Hey everybody, welcome to Life Worth Living. My name is Michael.
I'm Nora.
And this is Lily.
It's been a little while. I've gotten a haircut.
It's a story all to itself.
And here we are to do a Q&A. Why are we doing a Q&A today?
Because this is 6 years since we arrived into the Solomon Islands.
It's been 6 years, and when we arrived, Corban was just a little bit older than Lily.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
So, can you believe it's been 6 years?
So we have 10 questions that we're going to deal with today, and hopefully we're going to try to do it in one take, barring any interruptions from this little girl.
Or if we say something that we don't want on YouTube.
Yeah, or any interruptions from our other kids.
So what are the chances?
So, not high, not good. So
it would be really nice if I didn't have to do any editing. Anyway, so on that note, we'll jump right in so we can get going on this and hope so it's not like an hour-long video. So we have 10 questions. Question number 1. What is your favorite and hardest parts of the past 6 years?
I would probably say my hardest part was the first 4 months here. We just had a lot of relationship problems.
Not amongst ourselves.
Not amongst ourselves. Just
sounded bad.
Yeah. And so it was really hard. Plus just being away and what's going on?
Yes, the first 4 to 5 months period was very hard. I think probably anyone that has followed us that long kind of has a little bit of idea, because we kind of started with another ministry and then that did not work out. And so it was just a lot of issues with that, which we may make a video and we may talk about that a little bit more detail at some point, but not right now. Okay, favorite.
I would say probably this year. This year's been pretty amazing.
Yeah.
With constituting our church and getting that going and seeing the church grow and take steps to becoming
More established.
Yeah. Has just been really
we elected our first deacons. Church growth. I think it's been neat to see the spiritual growth, not like the growth numerically, although we have grown numerically. It's more like the growth within each individual within the church, and as the church as a whole has been really neat.
And we were advised earlier this year to look at what did they call that?
Unexpected fruit.
Unexpected fruit. Just like you look for fruit in certain places, but so many times just small things we neglect. I'm like, wow, that was actually a huge step.
That's a really big deal, yeah.
And that was a really big deal. And so just to change our perspective a little bit, that was really neat, and that was been cool to see.
Yeah. Oopsies. Okay, disruption number 1.
Okay, so now that Lily's gone and our kids are taken care of, how about you?
Okay, so my favorite part, I think I'd have to say this past year too, or the past few months actually, since Lily's been born, and I feel like my health's been at its best, since like here, one of the best, at least one of the times it's been one of the best times. So I've been able to do more in the ministry, even though I'm also homeschooling and busy with the 4 kids and everything like that. Although there's a special aspect of our first year here too, like all the newness of everything. Mm-hmm. And then my hardest would be either the first 4 to 5 months or COVID.
Yeah, those were not fun.
Being apart from the church and being stuck out of the country for so long was really hard.
Plus that was also the year your mom battled cancer.
Yes, and died.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How big is the Solomon Islands? How far does it take to get places?
Okay, so the Solomon Islands is approximately 992 islands. So the landmass is spread over a big part of the ocean. But all smashed together, it's the size of Massachusetts. Approximately, it's the size of Massachusetts, the landmass of the Solomon Islands. We are on the island of Guadalcanal, which is the largest landmass island of the Solomon Islands. And it's approximately the size of
little smaller. No, a little smaller than Delaware.
A little smaller than Delaware. That's what it is. Yeah, a little smaller than Delaware. So we recently took a drive about, how many kilometers from here?
68.
68 kilometers from here, and it took us approximately 3.5 to 4 hours to drive it. So 68 kilometers, I'll put how many that is in miles, because do you know that right off the top of your bat? Top of your bat?
No.
Top of your head?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so 68 kilometers is this many miles, right here. And it took us 3.5 to 4 hours.
So you're saying there will be editing on
to drive it. Because why, honey? Why does it take so long to drive?
The roads are terrible. They are very bad.
So many potholes.
My broken down Prado right now is testament to that.
Yeah, and there's not even, so I don't think you can drive from one tip to the next. Most people, if you're going from one part of the island to like another part far away, you'll take a boat to the other. Like even if you're going to the same island, you'll just take a boat. It's faster and easier, and yeah.
Unless it's stormy.
Well, that's true. How are you all adjusting to 4 children?
So Nora and I were talking about this, and we had 2 different answers. So this is gonna be funny. So for me, I think the hardest adjustment was from 2 to 3, because we were outnumbered then. And the adjustment here, like I haven't noticed much of a difference between 3 to 4. Plus, one of the things that for me at least, made it easier is we didn't have a major move right after the baby was born, and we've had that with every single kid that we've had.
Right.
And so that was a lot easier.
Right. Which also our adjustment from 2 to 3 was right in the middle. That was 6 weeks before my mom died. And so you were doing a lot more of the stuff with the kids and everything. So I think that was probably part of it. For me, it's been difficult. I think it's been harder than I thought. And part of it, I think, is just because we're on the mission field and we don't have the support of our family. When we went from 2 to 3 kids, we were surrounded often by a lot of family and had a lot of help. We were traveling and there was a stress of that, but we were also with a lot of family. I've definitely enjoyed now traveling and just being home and not, Lily's almost 7 months old and we haven't moved. We haven't traveled anywhere far. We're just home. But I think not having any family here to help has been hard. I think it being my first baby that my mom hasn't met has been hard. So it's just been a lot. And I'm homeschooling now. I wasn't homeschooling then. So that's a whole other aspect of trying to stay consistent with homeschooling while having a little baby and a toddler and, yeah. So it's been an adjustment for sure.
What has been the most rewarding part about being a missionary?
So I think there's a lot of rewarding parts about being a missionary. But I think one of the most recently that I've noticed has been learning the culture enough that while I'm going over part of the Bible and studying part of the Bible with Solomon Islanders and knowing the culture enough to be able to apply a specific part of what we're studying into the culture, and it fits so much. It's so much more, it comes alive a lot more than in U.S. culture. Mm-hmm. And there's been a couple really, really poignant instances of that where we'll be studying something and I just realized, wow, this really comes alive in this culture. They get this more than the U.S. and that's really neat. How about you?
I would probably say, I guess I would say similar. For me, it's always been, especially in discipleship, when I'm explaining a biblical principle or a passage of scripture and I'm trying to explain to them what this says, and I see it click and it register with them and it hits them where they understand it. That's really rewarding. Whether it's something that they've heard preached before but they never quite understand it, or it's something that they've never heard before, and they're like, oh, this makes total sense, and they're just like, you can see it really impacts them. It's one of the, like, that's the reason we came, is so that these people could hear God's word
and
understand it and hear the gospel. And so it's very amazing to see that.
Yeah, I think another aspect too is when you get a relationship with someone that deepens enough where they trust you. So I feel like more so than with women than with men, they have a very thick outer shell. Most women here do, just because life here is rough and they've been through a lot. And so to get to that point where they trust you enough to open up to you takes a lot of time and a lot of work. And so having some of those relationships start to deepen now that we've been here for so long has been really rewarding.
Yeah, Why did you change mission boards? We, after being here for some time, there was a need that arose in our ministry where we realized that we needed to make this decision, this change. The Holy Spirit was really working in our heart to make this change, and that change was against the policies of our former mission board. Yeah.
So we weren't allowed to, underneath the guidelines of that mission agency, we were not allowed to follow what we felt the Lord was wanting us to do.
And so we changed the Bible version that we used here.
And it's a very, very controversial topic in some circles, and in some areas
touchy.
It's not controversial at all. But the language situation here is a little bit unique in that English is the official language, but it's only spoken fluently by about 2% of the population, and I think that's generous. Mm-hmm. So here, there's over 70 languages. There are Pidgin. So most Solomon Islanders, English is their third to fourth to fifth language that they learn. So most Solomon Islanders, when they grow up, they'll learn the language that is spoken by their mom and their dad, and a lot of times that can be different. So that's 2 languages, and then they'll learn Pidgin, which is kind of the more commonly spoken language in the Solomon Islands amongst all Solomon Islanders, and then sometimes they'll even learn a language that is spoken by a neighboring group of people, and then in school English is taught. So
and so Pidgin is a mix of local dialects and English. And sometimes their English pronunciation is different than how English speakers speak it.
Right, and the grammar is different, and the vocabulary is much smaller. So anyway, English is taught in the schools. English is the government language. English is the newspaper and news media and things like that. But even though English is taught in the schools, teachers verbally use mostly Pidgin. Depending on the teacher and depending the area of the school. And so the books and the writing is in English, but the teacher's lectures are all in Pidgin and explanations in Pidgin because the students don't understand English. And so the pass rate is very, very low in schools. Yeah. Most Solomon Islanders do not ever finish school because of that. English is not understood here well.
Plus they also can't afford the school fees either.
Right.
In many cases.
Right. So anyway, that being said, we couldn't use one of the local language Bibles because we have around 10 different languages spoken in our church, different local languages spoken in our church. So obviously we couldn't use one of those. So then we were limited to either using Pidgin or using English. And the Pidgin Bible here is not used in
none of the churches here that we know of use the Pidgin Bible.
It's kind of more. It works kind of more as a commentary or a study help for Solomon Islanders. It's translated from various English translations, and it's just really, really big because the vocabulary of Pidgin is so small. They have to use they have to explain a lot of words instead of just a word-to-word translation. So we didn't, in talking with the different people in our church, they all said that was not an option that they thought was a good idea. Mm-hmm. So then we were to English, and we used the King James version, which is what the policy of our previous missions organization was for several years, and it was just it was putting a big roadblock in the lives of our church members and the people we're ministering to, and having the ability to have a personal walk with God at home and understand God's word for themselves, which we believe is very, very important.
So this was a decision that we made. It was not. We're not carrying a banner on it. We're not wanting to argue with anybody. This was a decision where our local congregation made the decision to do this change, and and we went through it, and it's been amazing to see. And we're really, the last few months have been great, and
it's been great.
And we praise the Lord for what the Lord is doing, and so, yeah. And we praise the Lord for our new missions agency too. That has just been such a blessing to us.
We're thankful for them both. And I think there's probably like 3 different people that will hear this. There's one group of people that, the King James is the only English Bible to be used ever, and they'll disagree with us, and you may disagree with us, and that's okay. And then there's another group that will hear this and say, oh, that makes complete sense. Yes, you need to find a Bible that they can actually understand. And then there's another group that are like, why is this even a big deal? But regardless of what group you find yourself in, please be respectful. There's a reason that we have not been public about this on our social media and on YouTube, and it's not because we're ashamed of the decision at all. We're not ashamed one bit. It's because we're trying to protect people, and so we will delete any comments that are not respectful. So that answers that.
Let's move on to a lighter question.
Does the beard need to stay? Yes, 100% it needs to stay.
She told me. No, I won't do that. Never mind. I was going to say something. Never mind.
Were you going to say how I said it made your face balance?
Yeah, it balanced out my face. Apparently.
That was like the first time I saw it, right?
She's
So
like, it balances out your face.
So for those of you who don't know, he grew the beard when we were apart. It was actually during my pregnancy.
Because I could never grow a beard while she was there, because she's too prickly.
Yeah, I didn't like kissing his face with it.
So I could never get it long enough to actually show what I would look like with a beard before she'd say shave it.
So when I was pregnant with Kezia, I was in the States. He was here, and so I didn't have to worry about kissing him.
So I'm like, I'm going to do it.
It has not been shaved since then.
Yeah. I don't even know what it looks like under here anymore. I don't want to know at this point.
And I like the beard, and I want it to stay. So it doesn't matter what you think.
Plus, it's a very cultural appropriate thing.
It does, and it makes him look older, which is good.
When I came, I was very, we came, how old was I? 26?
Oh boy, 27? Yeah.
I was young. And I wasn't working,
26.
We weren't working with a veteran missionary. And so here I am talking to these people saying, I'm a pastor, I'm starting this church. And I always just kept hearing like, man, you're young, you're young, you're young, you're young. And I grew the beard, those questions stopped. So
yeah.
there is a practical reason for the beard as well. Not only does it save on razor blades, which are extremely expensive, it is also advantageous to our ministry as well. So.
Okay, is this my question to ask or yours?
Do you have access to good doctors, healthcare in your area, fearful of sickness?
So, this is a little bit complicated of a question. There are good doctors here. There are many good doctors here. We know them, and there's no place to train to become a doctor here in the Solomon Islands. So all the doctors go overseas to train and come back. The problem is not the doctors. The problem is the resources available here are very, very limited. And so doctors go over and they train in Australia, and then with everything available to them, and then they come back here and they don't have what they had available in Australia, and so it makes things very difficult for the doctors. They run out of supplies. They don't have the machines and the diagnostic tools here that they have in Australia, the blood lab work available, and so there's a lot of limitations to it. So I've spent time in the hospital, and it's rough.
Twice?
Putting it mildly. Yes, twice. It's just rough. I don't know how else to put it. There's, it's just not, it's not a first world type situation at all. They run out of a lot of different things. They have limitations in the way that they can keep people. It's all ward based. So anyway, we have an evacuation plan. I think we made a video, right? Did we make a video on my evacuation?
You can
yes,
link that.
I'll link that this corner somewhere. I was medically evacuated. We have that same insurance. It's a yearly. We renew it yearly, and it helps evacuate us to Australia in case of medical things.
Plus, our insurance that we have right now also works really well with
it covers everything really well.
With being missionaries and everything, it works really well.
So as far as the fear side of things, yes, I think that is probably. I think it would be. I think any missionary in this situation would have times that they struggle with fear of it. I think more since we've had children and dealing with things happening with children. When Ellie cut her finger a year and a half ago, she cut off the tip of her finger, and just dealing with all of that in this type of a situation medically was scary.
She smashed off the tip of her finger.
It was, yeah. And then just the possibilities, you can spend all your time terrified of the possibilities of what if this happens or what if this happens.
We have a 6-year-old who is a developing daredevil, and that's pretty. There's a what do you call those? A BMX bike place and everything.
Like a
he's like, Dad, I want to go there, and I said, you're not old enough yet. And he's like, Dad, have you seen me driving around crazy around the house?
And our yard is very hilly and everything, and he'll just zoom around. And I'm like, oh. So yeah, there's definitely that aspect. I think even coming here at all, I have medical issues that are chronic issues that are a risk here. But at the end of the day, we know that God's in control.
Malaria, dengue.
He will protect us, and if it's our time to die, we will die. And if it's not our time to die, we will not die. Doesn't mean we are stupid about it, but I mean that's just kind of the short answer there. I know that wasn't very short though. Anyway, okay. What is one of the biggest cultural mistakes you have made?
I feel like our people are extremely gracious, and so I fear that I'm almost sure that there are more that we've made that we never knew about, just because our people are so forgiving and so gracious.
And Solomon Islanders in general are.
And it doesn't mean that we've asked. Like we'll sit down and we'll say like, are we doing anything that's wrong? And no, Ellie.
You gotta wait.
Are we doing anything that's wrong? And is there anything that we should change in our behavior? And they'll say, no, you're fine. And but there was one where every single time I go to this person's house, they roll out their their food, and I'm so thankful for it. I love it. And but anyway, on this one particular occasion, I scheduled them at church, and I said, hey, I'm going to come do a Bible study with you guys. And I said, listen, I will be eating right after. Please do not prepare me food. And they're like, oh, you don't worry, Pastor. I'm like, no, please don't. I've got a lunch meeting after I'm with you. I'm going to go straight to eat lunch. And anyway, I get to the house, do the Bible study. I didn't see an ounce of food, and anyway, I went through the Bible study, went great, and I was like, well, I need to go. I got this meeting coming up. And they're like, oh, you don't have time for food? I was like, and I probably should have eaten something, and that's something that I look back on. I'm like, I should have. Number one, I should not have scheduled a lunch date.
Right after going to someone's house.
That's just not something I should have done. So that was a little bit of a hiccup that I'm not going to make again. That's not a mistake I'm going to make again. So
yeah. I think I don't know that I can pinpoint one specific one that I can think of, but I think in general there's been some general things. Like my personality is it's pretty loud Americans in general are known for being loud. In other countries. I think that's been a struggle for me. Michael's personality, I feel like overall, like you were made for the Solomon Islands. You fit in very well, and he does great. I can come across very outgoing and loud, and so I've had to really tone that down. I've had to tone down just like learning to just be quiet. And yes, when I have another American there, then I can kind of forget. It like draws out the American in me, and then I like become more American and not Solomon anymore. And so culturally, I think there's been a gradual process over the years of learning to be quiet, to talk slower, to although they talk really fast, they just talk really, really quiet.
There's just this period of assimilation that's taken place, and
it's been a little
I think
process.
we would probably be very embarrassed if we saw ourselves.
I know we would.
If we were able to see ourselves as new people coming in. Oh my goodness.
What are you doing? They have a saying here.
Dry and
leg blue
first time.
Fast time. Yeah.
Fast time.
Dry and leg blue fast time. It's kind of the idea of you just got here, you just got out, just waded in from the boat. Like let your legs dry before you
start trying
anything too crazy.
Start being too free with your opinion.
Yeah, which probably we probably could have been told that earlier.
I feel like that would have been helpful.
I think there's been a few instances with church with church people too, with correcting Michael, where that's definitely a big cultural no-no, and so that's something that I've had to.
Oh yeah.
I've had to work on, like if he gives wrong information about like an announcement or like at the time or a date or something, I like my natural reaction is to correct him.
Honey, that's wrong.
And that is definitely a big not culturally acceptable.
But again,
so
I'm so amazed by our people's forgiveness, and
they've been very gracious with us.
Very, yeah. So
yeah. Okay.
now that the church is constituted, what are your next ministry goals?
I'll let you take that one first.
I think the first steps is, we don't know how far this is out, but I think it's one of our next biggest goals is trying to get the church into a permanent piece of land.
Yeah.
And the culture here is a very big thing for a church to have its own land.
To not be in a renting situation.
It's not seen as a good situation to be in a renting situation long term. And so the problem is land is just so expensive here. So it's taking time, and obviously the money situation is a big thing.
Land is extremely expensive. We're in the capital city, and it's
very expensive.
Extremely expensive.
We are, I think, and then obviously with land, our next thing would be to really dive into our church and trying to develop the next generation of leaders.
I think that's what we're most excited about, is now training our current members to be able to train other people. Yeah. And that's the big goal, right?
And it's really promising with what we have.
It's just exciting to see how God's already working in that. Long term, we've got huge goals in the sense of starting a Bible college,
and Christian school,
training teachers so that we can staff our own primary elementary school and secondary school, hopefully, Lord willing, someday, so we can train and give them give good Solomon Islanders a good education, obviously.
Gets a good education.
And then the Bible college to train pastors and pastors' wives.
To see churches planted all through the Solomon Islands.
We'd really like to get land and have that kind of be the base for missions work all over the provinces and all over the Solomon Islands, and so, yeah.
So it's gonna, it's got a big price tag on it.
It has a big price tag. It also needs some other people. So if God's calling you to Solomon Islands, let us know. Advice for missionaries just starting out. This is the last one. We'll end with this one.
I mean, I feel like this is a fairly common
question we get a lot.
And I feel like some of the things we're going to say is pretty common. But, I really believe it's important to take a missions trip or a survey trip to the field that you're going to before you actually move there, and before you actually start telling people and saying, "Hey, we want to go here."
Spend some time there.
It's really important to go mingle with the people, see the sights,
walk the streets,
smell the smells.
Spend time with missionaries. If there's other missionaries in that country, spend time with more than one. Spend time with multiple missionaries.
Don't just keep it at one.
Yeah. Get a very broad. Every missionary is going to have their own philosophy. Every missionary is going to have their own opinions about the culture, about different, what the best way is to do different things. And so, getting a broad view with that, I think, is extremely beneficial. I wish that we would have had that ability when we first came, to have some more longer term missionaries to learn from that had been here. And since then, we've been able to make friends with different ones that have been here a lot longer, and that's been helpful to us.
I think another thing would be when you're in missions conferences or when you're in churches and you hear of a veteran missionary, go and sit down, hear their stories, hear their advice. Yeah. Because one thing that has happened with us is when we got to the Solomon Islands in those first 4 months, going back and remembering some of the experiences that those veteran missionaries shared with us kind of encouraged us to say, okay,
this is normal.
This is normal. We're all right. Things don't always, this is not a fairy tale ministry.
Yeah. And it's not going to stay this way. Things will get better. There are ups and there are downs.
You're not the only missionary to have something similar like this happen. Yeah. And so...
Yeah, just sitting down with veteran missionaries every chance you get and hearing from them. I remember at one missions conference we were able to stay with a veteran missionary from, that was 90... veteran missionary lady, and just sitting with her, she's in her 90s, just sitting with her and hearing her stories was just so encouraging and helped to encourage us even now, remembering those. So
just a huge blessing, and so we're thankful for that.
I think another thing too with starting out with raising support is it's just our advice would be honest and just be who you are. Don't sometimes there's a whole lot of politics in missions, and there's a whole lot of temptation to get to the field faster. You have to, just be not honest, and I think that's really important. It's just be who you are. God will get you to the field when he wants you on the field, and you don't need to God will bring the right support structure to you.
There are churches out there that are more than happy to support you with who you are. So
just be honest, be who you are, and sometimes I know it can be discouraging when churches say no, or pastors will say no because of some specific area that you disagree on.
I don't like being told no. It's no fun. No.
Michael, I it's easy for me to say. I wasn't the one that was on the phone with all the pastors, so that was you.
But we're looking forward to getting more into a schedule. We've got a busy. We're trying to get into a new house. We're trying to get into a new meeting place.
It's been busy.
But we're going to try to start putting out more content. And anyway, we hope it's a blessing to you. We love you guys. Yeah,
thank you so much for sticking around. And that's kind of crazy that here we're 6 years since we've been here, but that means we're like 6.5 years from when we first started YouTube.
It's crazy.
Which is a little bit crazy that we've been posting for so long. So
the last 2 years have been very spotty. Very, very spotty.
Extremely spotty. But I would be curious, if you're watching this video, comment how long you've been watching us, or like when you started watching us. I would be curious how many of you have been watching us since the very beginning, since our very first video, if any of you have stuck around for that long. Or maybe everyone left and was like, oh, done with them. And now we have a bunch of new people. But either way.
And I just want to say thank you so much for, the times where we haven't been posting. We'll get messages saying, hey, we miss what you guys are doing, but we are praying for you.
Yeah, we're praying for you.
And that's really encouraging to know. And as a missionary in the field, it's such a blessing. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah. And until next time.
God bless. I've already said something else and I forgot what I was going to say.
You opened your mouth and was like, ah.